I've had it before, you know, count me as a family size of 4 because it's my boyfriend and my 2 kids and me. Okay, then let's have your income and your boyfriend's income. Well, I don't have his income. Well, then maybe we aren't going to count him. Anytime of those situations you run into, consult with your supervisor. We also have dealt with a number of same-sex couples who are married in other states. Utah does not recognize that as a marriage. Consulted, and our district director said, I don't care how they define their family, count it. In their file, you're going to see a paper that says, staff this with my district director who said let the client define their family as they want. So when it hits the fan, he's on the top for it, not me. So, the one
let's not do a whole bunch of weird stuff.
let's
Let's just do some really safe stuff that we're going to have to go into. But
oh, come
if
on.
somebody has somebody that they're living with, they're both contributing to the household, and they want that person included, as long as you're including them not only as one of the household members that counts, that takes that big chunk away at the bottom, but also their income, as long as you're including them in the whole piece, that's fine.
Yeah. If you have them at the top, they have to be in the bottom income section. Notice
that you're working.
Notice it doesn't say anything in here about income of children living with them. So if my 27-year-old's living in my basement, they don't count. I'm not including them. I'm also not counting them as dependent because they don't meet the dependent requirements under IRS. So there is an exception to this. And again, this is one where you're going to do some consultation on. But we have had cases in the past where a spouse or a parent refuses to participate financially because they just really don't want the person to be working or to become more independent. Based on individual circumstances, you can get an exception to that. They're rare, it's the exception. It's not because they just don't want to pay, it's because they're in a situation where somebody's trying to hold them back, if you will. Consult.
I had a client many years ago where she reported being married to a polygamous man. So we don't know how many people in the family count for income purposes. So that's something to start with the district director.
Anything you think is going to go, ooh, when the auditor takes a look at this one, who's going to be in my corner behind me? And I've got 20 years of audit experience with the state. So it was one of the, I was always looking at how's this going to look when somebody comes in and walks in from outside and looks at this and goes, why did you do what you did? Because of this, 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 and this. Oh, okay, that looks great. If you can't give them that, be careful with it. So here's some common questions we get with the 4A. What's a dependent? My adult child is still living with me. Dependents need to be 17 years or younger. This is right out of Chapter 8. Exceptions must meet the IRS dependent relationship income and support test. So if you have a child under the age of 24 that is living with you attending school full-time, they can count as a dependent. If you provided more than half of their support for your 19-year-old and they made less than, it's like $3,800 a year, and they're 19, then sometimes that can count. I was told to tell my clients, if you can count on your taxes, you can count them on here.
That's kind of confusing then, going back to what Barbara had said at the very beginning with, so we're allowed to count the children for the parents' sake, but with the children, we're not counting the parents even if they're linked in terms of IRS rules.
That goes back to Utah Code 15-2-1, period of minority. And our code says that at age 18, you're an independent household. So.
Right, but we're not counting them as an independent household if we want to count them on their parents, because the parents count them on their taxes.
Well, I'm not counting their income. This is just whose income. The other one's the dependent piece. I know, it gets confusing.
So separate that out for us, just the way you said it.
Okay,
so that we're all
with this part here, where we're looking at the client and family participation, this is just on whose income I'm counting. Alright, so when I'm doing my calculations on my 4A, these are the incomes I need to make sure I'm listing on the bottom. And it boils down to, I'm only counting, the parent's income with somebody under the age of 18. Is pretty much what chapter 8 says. Once somebody reaches 18, regardless of their living situation, I'm only counting their income. And then when we get to dependents, that's where we're looking at that other piece as far as a dependent, as a client who has dependents, here's the people I'm supporting.
So then if those dependents are earning money, are we counting their income as well?
Not if they're, well, we wouldn't be counting them typically as a dependent if they're over 24, unless they're, yeah, if they're earning money and they're living in a house, we can count them as dependents. If they can count them on their taxes, we can count them.
Count them as dependents, but
Count
I'm
them as
talking about what if they're
dependents.
making
Yeah, that's
money, are we
conflicting.
counting their income?
Doesn't matter because they're using their income to support themselves, they're not using their income to support their family. I think it's
So it
I think it's a
conflicts on taxes.
situation where it's another one of those, it's gonna depend. If you feel there's a situation where we really need to look at including somebody else's income, I would consult and send it on up. But according to the file, cause it's in chapter 8,
Well, essentially, that 4A has two separate pieces. You have your dependents listed at the top and you have the income at the bottom. And they
Chap-
don't-
yeah, chapter 8, 8-7, or 8.7 says section 4, dependents listed other than spouse should be 17 years or younger. Exceptions must meet IRS dependent relationship income and support test.
So what I heard you say was, let me spit it all out. If they're over 18, up to 24, and they're making under 3,500 a year, they can be counted as a dependent in the 48 if they're living with their parents.
If they meet the IRS dependent requirement.
That's what I just said. I just repeated what you said. which
Yeah.
was,
Well,
I'm
for-
assuming the IRS.
So
if
can I
they
hear
are-
this on the board so I can
They
have
are,
a visual?
they are
for anybody else?
identified or defined as a dependent if they are 24 and under, don't earn more than 3,500 a year, live with their parents, full-time school, 12 credits or more. whatever.
Full-time students, a full-time student, we don't care about how much they're making. Their parents just have to contribute at least half their support. That's why it gets confusing, because the IRS gets really confusing on this.
So all you have
No,
to
no, no,
ask them
no.
is, can you count them on your taxes?
Do you know what?
If they
It's,
say no, okay, they're not.
I think we're making this more difficult than we need to.
No, I'm just
Because-
trying
no.
to figure out what is being counted on the 48.
What I always do with the 4A, your client's gonna come in and say, this is my family situation. And they're gonna report that. We don't ask them to bring in their tax returns and say, who did you count as a dependent? We don't ask them to bring birth certificates. We don't ask them to bring pay stubs. We take our clients at whatever they tell us on that. So if my client says, yes, I'm listing my 24-year-old son and he's in school full-time, I go, okay, and I go on and I do it. And I just count him as a thing. Because I don't need to really worry about that piece of it. It's more the situations where you've got someone saying, my 42-year-old son's living with me, I need to